Good afternoon, my beautiful babes and babettes. How are we? I'm good, thanks for asking. I'm your resident active advocate, and it is no longer pissing rain outside. Yay! Still cloudy, but this is a step in the right direction. Alright, so, FYI, there will be no video tomorrow. I had a look at the training schedule for my work, and yeah, not a chance. I'm sorry, not a chance. I'm going to be busy all day, so that's fun. However, on the flip side of that, we are today going to be addressing the very last portion of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and it's very, very pretty. I really like this document, and I am, in my next series, going to be addressing the AODA, or Access for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. As the name implies, this is only applicable in my province, but the thing is huge. The thing is absolutely gigantic. So that series is going to take a while, and I'm just going to go through the whole thing and poke holes everywhere and say where my government has fallen shorter than short. In a lot of cases, okay? Not in every case. But, yeah, it's not the best picture in Ontario right now for people with disabilities, and especially during COVID, actually, there's been, people in isolation, that kind of thing. Myself included, to a certain extent, because I am actually immunocompromised, so I haven't really been able to go out since February of last year. So we're talking a year and a half right now. I have been out to see my friends, I have been out to see my family, and that's good, but I can't go to work, I can't go shopping, that kind of thing. And I'm not blaming the AODA or the lack of its implementation for that, but I'm just saying, life can be hard when you are a person living with disabilities, and that is especially true, or it augments the truth of that, when laws that were, at least nominally, made in our favor are not carried out. And at least in this case, in the case of the AODA, I can speak to and for some people, because I don't have every disability under the sun, but, I can't speak for people. For example, I cannot speak for people who are deaf. I cannot speak for people who are wheelchair users. These sorts of things that I have not experienced. I can only speak from my personal experience, but I have had a fair bit of experience as a person living with several disabilities. However, today, digression! I'm sorry. Today, however, we are here to finish up with the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and these are people groups for whom I would not presume to speak. So I am going to say, as I have said on multiple occasions, talk to the people, walk with the people. Do not walk ahead of the people and presume that you know better than they do about their own needs and their own rights. The entire point of documents like the UNDRIP and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission is for people who are not Indigenous to come to understand the struggles of people who are. And as I have gone through this process, when I was like halfway through the TRC, I said to myself, I'm going to be so enlightened by the end of this. Oh my gosh, I'm going to know everything and be able to help everyone. By the end of the TRC, I was saying to myself, girlie, you don't know nothing. You don't know nothing. And honestly, speaking as a person who has a bit of an ego, okay, I do, okay, but it's good for someone like me to keep my ego in check and say, no, you don't know everything, nor are you ever going to know everything, because you have no lived experience of the things that went on this continent, and that continue to go on this continent in the form of systemic racial oppression. I am white. I do not have to experience that merely by virtue of my birth. And quite frankly, I don't think that's fair because of the way you look when you're born, because of who your family is, who your ancestors are. It's not fair to be either elevated or subjugated on that basis, because people are most often, as you will notice, most often elevated or subjugated on the basis of things that they cannot change. What we can change, however, is that social structure, and that is what I am attempting to aid in doing videos like these. So, without further ado and further digression, I shall commence with the reading of the final part of the UNDRIP. Bam. All right, so we're starting with Article 42, and this goes up to and including Article 46. Article 42. The United Nations, its bodies, including the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, and specialized agencies, including at the country level, and states shall promote respect for and full application and appreciation of the provisions of this declaration, and follow up the effectiveness of this declaration. All right. You can feel and hear the finishing tone in these later articles, I think. But basically, this one is just reinforcing the document, not to mention saying, don't stop with this. Keep going. Expand upon the groundwork that we lay out here and do better by the different communities, because the more we can do with the power that we gave ourselves, the better. And the more the people themselves are able to do, the better. But we need to step aside and make room for that to happen. All right, so next, Article 43. Oh, it's so wee, it's tiny. Article 43. The rights recognized herein constitute the minimum standards for the survival, dignity, and well-being of the Indigenous peoples of the world. Yeah, when they say minimum standard, it's very much the same language as the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We can do more than what has been laid out in these documents. We can do better than what has been laid out in these documents. These are just basically a primer for here's where to start. But what you really need to start with is your own attitude. Okay, we can't start with full systemic change right off the bat. I cannot walk into Justin Trudeau's office, much as I would like to, and boot stomp him into doing better by oppressed communities. I can't, all right? Because I cannot do that, I have to start at home. And by start at home, I mean start in here, in my heart and in my mind. Those are the starting points. Everyone starts from the same spot. And we can't climb to the very top without starting at the very bottom. That's how mountains work. That's how processes work. So start with yourself. That's also a Confucian principle, by the way, but I digress. Yep. Okay. I mean, I'm just saying how far-reaching and universal these sorts of thinking is. All right. Article 44. All the rights and freedoms recognized herein are equally guaranteed to male and female Indigenous individuals. All right. This one is actually very, very important because in Western societies, i.e. white European societies, it is often the case that the right of the woman is not really thought of. We are an afterthought in many different circumstances. That's why you have the phrase male and female rather than female and male. A change of language equals a change in thought. It does if you maintain the new kind of language long enough, all right? It's a process of reprogramming your mind and reprogramming these expectations of where people ought to sit on these arbitrary hierarchies that we create for ourselves. In many Indigenous cultures, the woman is the head of the family because women have the power to give life. The only other life giver, in the words of the teacher who came to my college to give us sensitivity training, Liz Akawensi, I believe her name is. If you're Canadian, look her up, Google her. And you might find some interesting stuff. I certainly heard some interesting stuff the day before yesterday. But the whole philosophy that she put forward is that women have the power to give life. The only other life giver in the universe is God, is the Great Spirit, is, Gajenanido, I believe is what God is called in her language in Ojibwe. But I might be horribly mangling that, and if I am, I sincerely apologize. Some people may be more familiar with the name Gitche Manitou, which I do believe is Huron, but if you know the Christmas carol, 'Twas in the Moon of Wintertime, that is also known as the Huron Carol, and they do use the name Gitche Manitou, Great Spirit, in that carol. Unfortunately, I do believe it was written by Christians for the sake of attempting to convert Indigenous people to Christianity. We were out of line with that, and we need to step back and make room, make space for people to expand upon their traditional values and beliefs and lifestyles. Because there's not just one way to do everything, okay? We should not be arrogant enough to expect that everything should be done our way. Myself included, by the way. All right, maximize. Article 45. Nothing in this declaration may be construed, as diminishing or extinguishing the rights Indigenous peoples have now or may acquire in the future. That's very TRC. That's at the end of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Nothing that's been put forward here should be trampled upon in future. Rather, expand upon what you got. Article 46, and this is subdivided. It is also the last article in this document. 1. Nothing in this declaration may be interpreted as implying for any state, people, group, or person any right to engage in any activity or to perform any act contrary to the Charter of United Nations, or construed as authorizing or encouraging any action which would dismember or impair, totally or in part, the territorial integrity or political unity of sovereign and independent states. I'll get to this, okay? 2. In the exercise of the rights enunciated in the present declaration, human rights and fundamental freedoms of all shall be respected. The exercise of the rights set forth in this declaration shall be subject only to such limitations as are determined by law and in accordance with international human rights obligations. Any such limitations shall be non-discriminatory and strictly necessary solely for the purpose of securing due recognition and respect for the rights and freedoms of others, and for meeting the just and most compelling requirements of a democratic society. 3. The provisions set forth in this declaration shall be interpreted in accordance with the principles of justice, democracy, respect for human rights, equality, non-discrimination, good governance, and good faith. And that, my lovelies, is the end of the document. Basically, to round this out, it is just saying, as the Truth and Reconciliation Commission says, that all of the things that are implemented by way of this declaration should be done so in accordance with actual international law and such conventions as say the Nuremberg Convention, which has a law against, genocide. Okay? This document was written, I do believe, alongside the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So both of those were written after the last residential school in Canada was closed in 1997. But when it comes to the topic of genocide, it's not exactly the case that we've stopped, because the reservation/reserve system, depending on what country you live in, that is not meant for the prosperity of Indigenous peoples. That is meant solely for their oppression, for their repression, for keeping them out of the way and out of the spotlight. So not only do we not have to deal with them, look at them, but we certainly don't have to listen to them. Because the more stupefied by poverty people are, the less they're probably going to know about the real world and what has really been done to and with their people. I will not say for their people, because nothing that has been done to and with Indigenous peoples on this continent for the past 500 years has been to their benefit. Very much, in fact, to their detriment. The whole idea of you live on reserve so you don't have to pay taxes and you're being handed everything by your government. No. Please go, if you can, go and look at the actual living conditions on a native reserve/reservation, depending on, as I say, what country you're in. All right? Because it's not exactly the most wholesome environment. We keep going back to the issue of clean water. Of clean water, she says, shaking her clean water bottle. All right? That is the minimum of basic human rights. You can't live without water. All right? Come on. As I have said, what century are we living in? Go and look with your own perception at the conditions that the people actually live under, and you will shut your mouth about you're being given everything by the government. No, you're not, because another thing is unequal hiring practices. Whether you live on reserve or not, people, especially white corporations, are much less likely to hire you if you don't look like them. And even if they do hire you, it's probably going to be for a lower level position or at a lower rate than they would hire someone else who is, say, white. All right. So I am speaking here now to the nature of systemic racism, which still is very much alive in Canada and in America. I can't speak for the rest of the world. I live in Canada, but I know what things are like in America. They're not good, okay? They're not any better than they are up here in terms of the disparity between whites and Indigenous people, not even to speak to the conditions that other races are living in. So when it comes to the equal distribution of wealth, of property, of jobs, of education, of resources, of water, we are not doing our share. We are not doing what is required of us. It is not for one nation to subjugate another. It is not for one race to subjugate another. And I am actually quoting there the words of Liz Akawenze. As I say, look her up, please. Very intelligent woman. I do not want to speak around her as a teacher. I don't want to speak around or for or in the place of any Indigenous person. So anyone you know who is Indigenous and has these lived experiences, or their relatives have had these lived experiences, go commune with them. And if you don't know any Indigenous people, find them. They're all over Twitter. And it's awesome because I like the internet. People have a voice. Whether they're listened to is a different matter. But use your voice for good and unite your voice with others. Do not talk over them. Do not talk for them. Talk with them. Walk with them. Talk with them. And just be a decent human being, because that's the very first step. My phone is ringing and we're done anyway. So I will see you all on Monday because I take weekends off. Fare thee well! Mwah!